Hello everyone and welcome to my patch notes breakdown, as well as a tier list at the end. I wanted to cover a few things on the balance changes that happened a little over a day ago and kind of go over my thoughts for the 0.2 update. So first in the balance changes, Brell, which was a hard carry for most teams, is getting nerfed. So he's getting a reduced starting health as well as a reduced attack damage gain per level. So they nerfed his starting health as well as his damage scaling, making him a little bit worse in the late game. As far as Chetlif goes, a very strong engaged champion. It looks like he also got nerfed. His reduced starting health and health increased per level. So pretty much brought his health down as well. So they're kind of turning him into a more of a damage support champ than kind of like your balanced champion, it looks like. So the starting attack damage. So they reduced him for the early game, but they slightly increased him for the late game. So they slightly increased attack damage per level. So they reduced his overall starting damage, but increased his scaling. But this is important here. Max level attack damage unchanged, meaning whatever he was at his end game level, he's still the same. It's just going to take him longer to get there from starting to end. But they really wanted to nerf his early game potential because he could easily pull off a combo and take a lot of champions out. They also had fixed a bug that prevented Chetlif from leveling up at the correct rate. Okay, so that's new. I didn't know he was not leveling up at the correct rate. So Naji, which is our, I guess, monk assassin is the best way I could put it. With Naji, he's really good at finishing off opponents, especially in the late game. He can just pop his ability off multiple times, executing his opponents. They increased his starting health. Okay, so he got a buff. They increased his starting health, increased health gained per level, which is really strong. So Naji's biggest weakness, although he's fast and can dish out a lot of damage, he was not sustaining. So characters like Brell or Chetlif would just come in on top of him and completely wipe him out before he even got the champion damage off. So Barnard, it looks like they just increased his starting health. Barnard saw a lot of play in the early renditions of the game. He was really good. We found out that he was really good at stealing objectives, which that being the sway stone and covering and cornering people in the side objectives for the scroll. He's also really good at pinpointing towers when they are needing their last hit. So honestly, this might maybe some team comps will use Bernard, but I still think he just needs more burst damage with his ultimate, or at least a better charge rate for him to be even viable right now. It's really slow to use and it's really easily dodgeable as well. So for Mojo is the new champion that they released, and they reduced his ability charge rate gained per level. So Mojo is really strong and he's shaking up the meta a lot, and I'll get to that in my tier list. But honestly, if you're running a comp with Mojo in it, you are just gonna have to take longer to pull off your combos. So he's gonna have a slight reduced ability charge rate gain per level, but that doesn't mean you can't just throw an ability scroll on him and he just gets it faster. So not too big of a change, although it is a nerf. I don't think it's going to affect him too much. Same thing with Bernard as well. It's a buff, but I don't think his buff is in the right area, but we'll see. So going through the patch notes, let's go into the tier list. Alrighty. So starting up, I said Bernard, he has a good ability. His attack is low, his health is low. He did get a health buff. However, When he's using his ability Radiant Blast, even though it applies a slow and a burn to his opponents in an area of effect, I really don't see him changing much in the meta. He's just too slow of a champion, and there's a lot of other champions that can do a whole lot better than he can at what his job is, which is dealing a bunch of damage all at once. Like, even we'll get into Vendrick's better, to where he has that health, he has that damage, and we'll get into that as well. So I'm actually going to put Bernard all the way at the bottom in D tier right now, because I think he is probably the worst. Not saying you can't use him in a composition, because he's really good at stealing objectives, but it's just going to be hard to use him because of his slow speed, and his ability is easy to miss. So I'd probably just prioritize that for objectives, really. So Brel is next. And Brel received a nerf as well, but again, I don't know if it's going to dramatically change things. He's definitely going lower on my list. But his attack range is 3, which is the longest in the game. His ability is maxed, his attack is 2, and his health pool is low. Honestly, Brel, I see him being an A tier. He's not quite S tier, even though he has that range. I think Brel is a solid A tier champion. And, you know, because he has that range and he can poke from afar, he also has a crazy ability that will go down here, is his bullseye ability. Not only can it damage enemies from a distance, it's single target damage, by the way, so if it only hits one unit, but the damage is increased, the distance is also stays the same, but his damage increases with the distance traveled. So if you hit at max distance, you get the most damage, and it also applies a root to the damaged target, so causing them to stay in one place. So he still has some utility, and that's why he is in the A tier. But we're actually going to get into one of the best characters in the game, or champions. In my opinion, I think this will be our first S tier champion. Although he did get a nerf, he also got a lot of damage scaling now, which means in the later games he's going to just continuously get stronger. So I actually don't think the change did much to him, really, outside of maybe his survivability at the beginning and his usefulness, but outside that you can level him up pretty quick. And let me go back to his ability. So his ability is the Twilight Pierce, and it applies to stun at level 2, and he grants Flurry at level 3, meaning he can just get those hits in for a short amount of time, which is still really strong. It's still a really strong ability, and I'll be honest, even if the ability did absolutely no damage, in my opinion, the character would still be really, really good and strong just for the stun, just the hold in place. So I think he's rightfully earned his place in S tier. Mind you, we had to nerf Chetlif probably like 2 times now, one for the open beta, and I think one right as the start of the beta came out. Like, Chetlif was just really, really strong in the early patches, but now they're kind of toning him back a little bit, so it's nice to see that they're not letting him just fly loose. So Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is our super tank, as I like to call it. You know, she's got the best health pool in the game. Good, pretty, you know, average ability for a lot of characters, and pretty decent damage for a 2. Her King's Protection, although protects her allies within that range, it reduces received damage to Gwendolyn as well as her allies. But with the new meta arising, with Mojo being probably the #1 pick right now for tanks, as we'll get into later, if Mojo gets a hold of somebody, or if Chetlif stuns somebody out of place, Gwendolyn really loses her ability to tank, and basically loses her purpose, is for lack of a better word. In this meta, it's very fast and combo based, so standing around a tank is not the best right now as far as the meta is developing. of what champions to play. So I think she's not as bad. She doesn't deserve D tier because she does still serve a purpose that no one else in the game can do, and that's just be a heavy, hard tank. You can still run her in team compositions, but I think she's in C tier. You'll see like better tanks that I put up as well in the future, but as far as Gwendolyn's concerned, I think with the new meta of Mojo, she's kind of just lost her purpose of being that main tank when you can just yoink somebody. Alright, so now we get into the Troublemaker. And I call this the Troublemaker because this little fella has shaken up the meta. Although Mojo has gotten a slight nerf in his ability, I don't think that was the problem to begin with. I think his problem is just his ability in general to hook people. So if you look at characters like in League of Legends or Smite or something like that where there's hook champions, there's stuff that you can hide behind in those games like minions to avoid the hook. In GlassBreakers, there is nothing to hide behind. You can even grab people from one section and bring them into your own base over the missing tiles as well. So as of right now, there's really little to no counterplay to Mojo as far as, you know, little tricks you can do with movement and body blocking. But outside of that, it's almost a must that you will see Mojo in pretty much every team composition until something arises that just shakes Mojo up or just makes him feel irrelevant in a way. So his ability is free hugs, and when he grapples somebody, he pulls them in. Level 2, it slows the target, and it also has increased range of 5 tiles long at late game. Like, that is huge. That is past the middle of the field into the opponent's base. You can pretty much yoink somebody from safety all the way back to your base. And that's the scary part of what Mojo's doing right now. And combine Mojo with Chetlif combo with a Naji finisher is brutal. You can hook somebody in, stun them, and kill them all in one same go while your turret attacks in your base. So Mojo, I'm actually putting probably the best character in the game right now. Not that he can outdamage Chetlif, because Chetlif can do a crap ton of damage and go in and engage. The reason I'm putting Mojo as the best character in the game, as of right now, is because he is so common now in everybody's team composition, and if you don't have him in your team composition, it's because you probably haven't bought him yet. Mojo is definitely the talking grounds of GlassBreakers, because there is no counterplay outside of a few tricks. But, you know, as far as champion counterplay, there's not really a champion that counters Mojo. Mojo can just sit back, wait for you to mess up, and then pulls you in. So I definitely suspect, although I would be pretty sad if Mojo got nerfed again after his slight nerf, I honestly don't think that Mojo will get nerfed, but in his current state right now, he definitely needs a counter. At this point in time, everybody's going to be running Mojo, and he's just going to remain the best character in the game, just on the sole fact that a grappler champion in GlassBreakers is really scary when you can't hide behind something. So, going on to Naji. We mentioned him before in the Mojo Chetlif combo, but Naji is your monk assassin, is best way I can put it. He has an execute ability called Naji's Strike, and it essentially eliminates champions that are on low health. The second level increases the damage dealt, as well as the third level, when you knock out an enemy with it, you can instantly get your ability back. So think of Pyke from League of Legends using his ultimate. Once you take down one champion, you can go ahead and take down another and just squad wipe. In the meta that is progressing right now, that is solely combo based and pulling people in, I really think Naji deserves to be an A tier above Brel, because although Brel has single target damage and shoots from a far away, I think Naji does a better job at just finishing off your opponent when they are in a disadvantaged state. Alright, so this is going to be my controversial take here, which is Reese. With a 2-range ability, very strong, and attack and damage low. Her ability is... oh gosh, if I can pronounce this. I'm just going to say Blessing because I don't want to butcher it. We're moving on. Pele's Blessing, maybe. So you can heal an ally or yourself. The level 2 applies a regen to the healed target, as well as the level 3. The Blessing heals non-targeted allies by a small amount. Now this is huge. In a team-based comp, when you are facing your opponent and you have Reese on your side, you can let your champions get to so low that it baits your enemies in, and then you heal, and now you're in the advantage. After they've already wasted all their abilities on you, you can immediately heal, re-engage, use your abilities, and win the fight. In the right hands, I actually think Reese will be an A tier and will be the 3rd best character in the game. Now, although her offensive abilities are lacking, you can turn Reese into a mage by giving her damage scrolls. You can turn her into a support healer by giving her the ability scrolls. Or you can turn her into a tank yourself. You can make Reese, although I don't recommend it, I've seen people do it. You can make Reese your tank and heal yourself as you stay in the fight. So Reese is the only healer in the game and has that versatility and sustainability in the game. This is why I put her over Naji, which Naji requires a pretty good setup to pull off his combo, and Brel requires spacing and a few, I guess, people trying to get in one area, because if Brel misses his arrow, he's done. But Reese's heal will always hit the allies, and that is why I think this is my most controversial take, I think, because much people would put her less because, oh, she doesn't do damage, she doesn't support the team. I think she's probably one of the best supports in the game, even if it's not damage based. Like Chetlif, for example. He has a stun, Mojo has a grapple. I think we're really in a support meta right now. I think I'm just going to go ahead and label it. We're in a support meta, and having Mojo, Chetlif, or Reese on your team will benefit your team. So Mojo for the hooks, Chetlif for the stun, and Reese for the heals. Then comes your damage champions. I think having a strong support will carry you a long way no matter who you put on your team. So now getting into the last part, we have Vendrix, which is I'm going to classify this as, I'm going to say it as a golden boy of GlassBreakers. He's not necessarily good at anything. He's not necessarily bad at anything. He hits like a truck. He can tank really well. And his ability, Torrent Flame, can hold down objectives or trap somebody in a corner. You can surround yourself in flames, deal damage to anybody who's beside you. The second also applies a slow, and the third greatly increases the duration. Now, a lot of people build him as tank and ability. Some I've seen turn him into a fighter and do really, really strong attacks with the damage scroll. No matter which way you build Vendrix, he will always be a good all-rounder for your team. The only things I would watch out for is the champions in S tier. Mojo and Chetlif both counter Vendrix. Mojo can grapple and pull you away from everybody else, and Chetlif can stun you and stop your ability. So you want to use your Torrent Flame ability when either both of these are on cooldown, or if you're really confident in dodging the skills. So the reason I say Vendrix is the golden boy of GlassBreakers is, well, he's smack dab in the middle in B tier. He is right where he belongs. Like I said, he's not good at anything. He's not bad at anything. If you have him on your team, you're not going wrong because he can turn into a defensive tank or an oppressive attacker. He also has a really, really strong ability. So, with all that said and all the patch notes, this is my official 0.2 open beta tier list. We have Mojo and Chetlif in S tier, rightfully so. We have Reese, Najee, and Brell in A tier. We have Vendrix in B tier, Gwendolyn in C tier, and Bernard in D tier. So this is my rendition of my 0.2 tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment if you either agree with this list, you have your own list. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter as well, because as the game develops and we get more competitive scenes, these things will develop. But like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.